So just like many of you, I took 4 years of Spanish between high school and college. And I remember my first trip to PR, Puerto Rico. I couldn't order a number one combo at McDonald's. The question is, how does that happen? So today I'm going to show you why traditional Spanish methods fail you and how I have three cheat codes that you can use starting today that got me to fluency in less than 3 months. So, just like many of you guys, I feel like school gave me false confidence when it came to Spanish. Now, I started in middle school, and this is when I knew something was wrong. I had a Mexican classmate, and he was getting C's and D's on the exams, and I'm getting A's, A pluses on these exams, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm doing better in Spanish class than him, and he's a native Spanish speaker. Well, I figured out the system, how to do the conjugations. He ain't know none of that stuff. Why? He spoke Spanish. And that's really the point. You don't need to know all of the mechanisms behind how it works. You just need to speak the language. Now, my trip to Puerto Rico, it really exposed like the gap that I had because I got there with some crazy confidence. And I remember going to McDonald's and I was like, combo uno, whatever. And because of my pronunciation or whatever happened, they didn't respond to me. So they go to the back and they find the one English speaker in the McDonald's. While we were at McDonald's in Puerto Rico, that's another story for another day. And they push her out to the front. And I remember so vividly, we tried to order like different drinks. Like I tried to get the orange soda, my friend tried to get the Sprite, and there's like, no, Coca-Cola, solamente hay Coca-Cola. They're like, nah, man, you don't speak enough Spanish to get options. And so that got me to thinking, like, why is it so difficult for them to understand me? I took Spanish for almost 4 years. Now, when I decided to take things serious, it was after that trip, and I purchased Rosetta Stone, spent hundreds of dollars on that program, and I was very consistent with my lessons. I was probably doing an hour, 2 hours per day with Rosetta Stone, and it still did not get me to any level of fluency that I could use in real life. Why? It's very intuitive. It teaches you a lot of sight words, and if you're smart enough, you can guess the correct answer without actually learning Spanish. So, what happens next? Well, I decided that I needed full immersion. That has to be the secret, right? I moved to Costa Rica on like 2 weeks' notice, packed all my stuff up from Atlanta, moved back to Rockford, dropped my stuff off in the basement at my grandmother's house, and I'm off to Costa Rica. Now, I actually started at a language school there. I'm in Costa Rica, but my Spanish teacher was Mexican. Don't ask me how that happened. And she spoke no English. And I had 3 hour lessons 5 days a week. And I went for 2 weeks straight. And she gave me, again, a bunch of grammar rules. We did a little bit of conversing, but you have to realize I only have very limited Spanish. So when we hit a wall, we hit a wall. And I realized that I was supposed to do it for 2 months. I lasted 2 weeks. I wasn't actually learning. And the other day, I actually found a notebook that had my lessons from there. That grammar she had me doing, still to this day, is more complicated than what I need to know to communicate with people. So I spent 6 weeks in Costa Rica, and it was a great cultural experience, but I did not learn the language the way that I had hoped. So when I get back to the States, I was doing a master's program, and I was determined to learn Spanish while still being in the States. Now, let me explain to you why full immersion is a great idea, but also can be very dangerous. Full immersion is like putting someone in the deep end of a swimming pool and they don't know how to swim. You need to start them off in the shallow end first, or give them, I don't know, a life jacket or those floaty things, right? And so that's kind of the method that we're going to dip our toe into today. So the crazy thing is, after I got back to the States, I put together my own little program. I would say in about 3 to 6 months, I was having full conversations with people in Spanish. And people thought it was because of my Costa Rica trip. I was like, no, that trip motivated me more than ever. But this program, this system that I developed is actually what got me to that level, to fluency, to be able to converse and communicate with native Spanish speakers. So, look, I don't want to waste your time. I want to start with cheat code number one. This is where you want to teach chunks of phrases over grammar. Why? It goes back to my Mexican classmate. He knew the language. He didn't know the grammar rules. He knew chunks. He knew phrases. He didn't understand it in isolation. So let's think about sports, for example. If I was going to teach you basketball and I want to teach you how to shoot a free throw, there's a lot of information you don't need to know. Like you need to understand what a basketball is, what a free throw is, but that's about it. And you don't need to know the distance between the hoop and the free throw line, how many fouls each player gets, what's the technical, what's the flagrant, when people are in the penalty. That's unnecessary information. That's what happens with Spanish when they're like, you need to be able to conjugate. Él, ella, usted, estamos, estábamos, and all these different things before you get started. It gets overwhelming and it's actually not very useful. So when we're dealing with chunks, we're going to teach you whole phrases at once, teach you how to use them, and then later on, we'll dig beneath the surface and explain what does that mean, where does that come from. So a very common phrase you'll hear is "de dónde eres?" ¿De dónde eres? Now, that just means it's a question. Where are you from? You're going to hear that a lot, especially speaking with Spanish speakers. And if you travel, it's just a very common thing to ask people. I know, looking like how I look, people may assume I'm African American, and I am, okay, 100%. But when I'm abroad, I could be from Africa. I could be from the Caribbean. I could be from Colombia. They don't know. So one of the first questions people ask me is, ¿de dónde eres? Now, you don't need to know that de is a preposition like of or from. Donde alludes to location. Eres comes from ser, which means to be, which is the second person version in the present tense. You don't need that information. You just need to know de donde eres. And what do you need to know after that? Well, how to respond, right? And so you would say soy de in whatever country, city, state that you're from. Now, I always use my state, but I also like to use my country as well. And remember, when speaking with Latinos, always say you're from United States. Soy de Estados Unidos. Why? They get a little offended if you say you're from America because technically all of it is the continent of America, North America, South America, and we're all Americanos. All right, let's move on to cheat code number 2. This is the one that honestly is was eye-opening for me because you know 1,000 words in Spanish already. You just don't know how to pronounce them. So there's this thing called language transfer. I did not discover language transfer. I discovered it the same way that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. But language transfer is key, and I'll show you how. Normal, posible, favorito, diferente, right? You understood all those words, right? Normal, possible, favorite, different. You never heard them before, but they're so similar between English and Spanish. It's what we call a cognate. Now, there are false friends out there, but we won't get into those today. The key to unlocking the transfer words, there's a couple keys, but the first one is understanding the vowel sounds. The great thing about Spanish is the vowel sounds never change. So the Spanish A, the letter that we know as A, is A. It's kind of a short sound, A. The Spanish E is E. Don't think that of it as A. It's E. It's more of a shorter, sharper sound than how we say A. It's E, but that's the Spanish E. Now, this is confusing for us. The Spanish I is pronounced E, like the sound E in the word see. E. All right, so we got the first three. A, E. Then the Spanish O. This is the one that's the most similar, but it's still a little bit sharper. It's not O, it's O. O. And then last but not least, the Spanish U. This is the one that be killing native English speakers. Is ooh, ooh, like ooh. I guess saying ooh and ah. So that's the Spanish use, ooh. So when you see the word university in Spanish, universidad, please don't be one of those gringos that says universidad, universidad. So it's just one of those things where you got to break it down syllable by syllable and make sure you're pronouncing the vowel sounds correctly. And there you go. You already got 1,000 words in Spanish. I would say that the biggest mistake that people make is trying to wait until they're ready to speak the language. Listen to me. You're never going to feel 100% ready to speak a foreign language. That's the whole point. It's a foreign language. It's something not native to you. My biggest cheat code that helped me a lot, and I did this during the pandemic, is I made a script. What are like the 10 to 15 most commonly asked questions that I receive? And I did that chunking method and I put it together. Now, I have an actress friend who was on Chicago PD a couple times, and I asked her, like, how do you practice for your monologues? She says, I write them down and I practice in the mirror. Now, I felt kind of silly practicing in the mirror, but you know what I did? I used my laptop and I recorded myself speaking in front of my camera every day for 30 days straight. Now, a couple things. One, by day 30, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. And if you listen to the audio from day one, you're going to cringe because you're going to sound horrible in your own mind. But that's the point. It's actually very measurable. You get to see your success. And what I would do is just add things on. So start off very simple. Start off with a script like what your name is, where you from, how old are you, your profession. So for me, it would be Me llamo Darian. Yo tengo 43 años. Yo soy de Illinois. Yo soy profesor del español. And then eventually you can go into things like what you like to do. Me gusta el cine. Me gusta correr. Me gusta el gimnasio. And different hobbies that you might have. And so I would start off with the 4 original statements and then eventually build upon that. So go maybe 5 to 7 days just doing the original 4 statements, recording yourself saying this, and then listen to your pronunciation. And you're going to know if it's sounding correct. Remember those vowel sounds and make sure that you really land on those sounds. And this is going to be a great tool for you that you can use to practice your Espanol. Now, that's your starting point. All right. I want you to start doing that today. Record yourself. And if you want to receive a free lesson from Cheat Code Spanish, go ahead and post cheat code in the comments. I'll send you the free lesson. And I would really like to know your updates on this challenge. Maybe we can make this a 60-day challenge. Maybe we can make this a 90-day challenge. And I promise you, your Spanish is going to improve. Now, if you like this type of content, like the way I break things down for you, go ahead and comment, like, subscribe, okay? And also put in the comments what topics you would like me to talk about, all right? Maybe the next video might be something I address that you commented on, all right? Until later, Chico Spanish, and I'm out.